because the writers get to really express themselves in paragraphs, which they don't do anymore on television. But I remember when I first got the original Kardashian scripts, when I was the first Kardashian. I invented the Kardashians as a golden set on the Next Generation. And I remember I could have gone very easily, I could have gone one-dimensionally evil and villainous and heavy and aggressive and mean. And slowly but surely I was able to add some different textures that I wanted to, because I'd done that. I'd done that standing on my head years ago, playing one-dimensional heavies. I didn't want to do that with this character. So gradually, slowly but surely, began to develop more sensibilities about Kant, making him reasonable, making him intelligent, making him compassionate, all those things. And I think the writers picked up on the fact that I could stretch, that I was a real actor, in other words, that I was not limited to playing one dimension of this character. And so they gave me tons to work with. I was saying, I had a daughter that I was going to kill, and then I finally softened up at the end of all that, and I was in kind of crush on Kira and all this stuff. Wonderful things that I got to actually play with Kant, as opposed to making him one-dimensional heavy, which I never wanted to do. And I'm very thankful.
I think we got number 3 though over there.
Okay.
The gentleman, I'm sorry.
My name's David.
Dave.
I wanted to ask you what it was like working with Robert Urich on Vegas and Clint Eastwood on Dirty Paris.
Yeah. Everybody pray for Robert.
Yeah.
Robert needs our prayers. Robert Urich is one of the, and genuinely so,
Yeah.
he's one of the nicest men I've ever met. He is a good person. He never exhibited any of that star stuff, never used it to elevate himself above other people. Always felt like he was a lucky human being, good success, that he was blessed, and you can see the way he's dealing, even though his particular cancer, thankfully, has a high rate of recovery. Still, he's handling it with a kind of grace and dignity that's like that is. And Clint Eastwood is an icon. I can't say anything about Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood is a Hollywood icon. He's a very nice man. I got along with him very well, but I don't know him. I have no idea who he is.
I always think of Clint Eastwood as a man I would follow into battle.
Yeah, you're right.
He struck me that way. He's one of those people, and I don't say that about a lot of men, believe me. But he's one of those people that he's so strong, he's so real, no pretensions about him at all. And I'm a fairly strong person, so I need to be led by someone who's strong. And I always felt, I wasn't with him that often, and I can't say I know him real well, but the short time I was with him was completely enjoyable. He was totally giving to me. We had the fight scene in Deadpool, and I was wearing my own suit. He was so afraid he was going to ruin my suit. That's the way he was.
No, he's very professional, extremely professional. And when you're working with him, again, it's like, the most important thing for him is the work. He just wants to get the work done.
Yeah.
But he's a very private man, very private. Anyway,
yeah, I just wanted to know, is it absolutely certain that an Abraham is history, or is there a chance that he might still be floating around there and that he might see him again?
Who are we talking about?
An Abraham.
Oh, Tane. Oh, anything can happen in Star Trek. Believe me, as a matter of fact, Ira Bear said the same thing. He said, we can bring back Tane. Yeah, that's no problem.
Other
Hi, Mushi.
If you have something like you could influence on a script, what would be the first thing for both you and your partner who would like to have your characters do?
Oh, boy.
What would you like them to do? Or to do to interact?
I suppose express something that he hasn't expressed yet. Maybe a love scene.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I want. I want Garrett to fall hopelessly in love with someone.
Yeah.
I really do. Hopelessly in love. And besides myself?
No.
I'm sorry, what?
Besides this year, I was just kidding.
Oh, no. Well, I came on very strong in the very first episode when I came on. I decided that. I've said this a lot of times, you know, I think Garrett is not a question of, you know, whether he's homosexual or heterosexual. I think he's multi-sexual. and perhaps even interspecies. And I make no judgments about that. And so I thought, well, you know, this, you know, he was very attractive to me last year. And of course, that started a whole. So yeah. No, but I would love him to fall. Now, I'm hoping that in episode 8 that they're going to have Garrett. I hope that they're going to take it that way. They're getting a lot of mail from people who are offended by the idea, and they may succumb to the mail too. I hope it's not that much. About people who are offended by an older man and a younger woman. I mean, please. Please.
The mail's coming from me.
Yeah.
Well, I'm on email as well, and we're having discussions about possible relationships of the characters involved. And for a long time it seemed that it would be possible that Garrett and Bashir would enter a relationship. I mean, this is open-minded 21st century and so on and so on. So this idea was not taken very nicely by many people.
No.
And on the
Especially
other
in
hand,
America.
Yeah, and on the other hand, it seems all right all the time on television if a much older man is in love with a much younger woman, which some people I know call it like a title robin or something.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's
we're much more puritanical than say Europeans. I mean, Americans are. We have a lot more determined and judgmental ideas about what relationships should be. And I find it that what's unfortunate about it sometimes is that, well, I'd say it's unfortunate because it does influence the producers and the writers, and they start reading the mail and then they start behaving accordingly. And I think they should be a little more courageous.
Well, it's a dangerous place to be, I think. This idea of one older person and one very young person, I think it tends to be psychologically challenging, emotionally challenging. I went out with a woman not too long ago. I had a date with a woman that was in her mid-40s, and she said, you know, I had a date with a guy recently, and he said to me, so what was the big deal about John F. Kennedy? He was younger. I mentioned he was much younger than she was. And she said, take me home. She realized immediately that they were not going to have anything in common. So, I mean, when you think about these things, oftentimes, I mean, I'd love to fantasize about 20-year-old girls, fine. But the reality is, it really wouldn't have any longevity in a relationship like that because we wouldn't have a whole lot in common. I mean, sex is sex. Sex is universal, okay? We can all, whether you're 80 or whether you're late teenager, sex is basically going to be sex. But it's those other things that have to come into a relationship that become important. The texture of a relationship is based more on other rooms in the house. You get my drift.
I think Mark and I should write a Cardassian Dear Abby. What do I do with the ridge on my left ankle?
Rob did some
No, your name is?
Linda.
Linda.
If you could play any alien or even a human other than Cardassian, what would you want to be?
Just the both of us?
Yeah.
Well, I have thought about it, and I've come to this. You know, we only have so many dimensions as human beings. We have a limited amount of dimensions and emotions that we deal with. To try to invent something that is non-human is impossible. It's impossible. We can only exaggerate what we already know, feel, and have. But we can't invent another emotion. Because I thought early on, doing this character, I thought, what can I do to make Ducat otherworldly? There's really nothing you can do that is not human. Did you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So we're very limited in whether it's physical body movements or whether it's imagining another psychological state or emotional state. They all come from our human beingness. So to try to invent something is impossible.
It's a good point, Mark, because I think all these creatures are symbolic of very aspects of our human selves. And so I think you can absolutely.
Yeah.
So, but I'll tell you what I'd love to play. I'd love to play a half-breed. I'd love to play a cross between a Vulcan and a Klingon.
I'd like to play a woman.
In other words,
Female.
I would see a female Vulcan.
Really?
In other words, female schizophrenic. All right, I see that look on your face.
One more right here.
You both have such fabulous voices. Have you done voiceover work? Either of you?
I've never done voiceover work.
No, neither have I.
It's a whole little niche of the business that I've never gotten into.
I tried breaking into it. I was back in New York a couple of years ago doing a Broadway play, and I got hooked up with a very good voiceover agent there. And she started sending me out. If I would have stayed in New York, I would have gotten into it.
Wow,
Then I
it's a
came
good
back
place.
here, and yeah, New York.
It's a good way to make a living. You hear all these people all the time. You know their voices. Sometimes you can't put the name to the voice, but it's a great way for actors to be unidentifiable in commercials and still make a living.
But what I just did, I just finished reading John Delancey has this. He's just started this company where a group of actors where we'll be reading various like H.G. Wells, The Invisible Man, and The Time Machine, and Jules Verne stuff. And we just read, I guess it was The Invisible Man, Leonard Nimoy, Armin Shimmerman, and myself, a bunch of others. And I'd love to do more of that, radio plays. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you.
great. I mean, it's nice to have this kind of intimate, thing here. That's really a pleasant, rather than one of those creation things where I can't even see into the audience. I have to ask them, please turn the lights up and get the lights out of my eyes.
Yeah. This is really nice. Very intimate. Very, very nice. Thank you. Thank you.